work of the usher. So let's go through that. We're going to start with just looking quickly through the Old Testament, New Testament, and it's, some of these aren't all the way talking specifically about the usher, but I think it'll help you get a perspective that biblically the idea of somebody helping other people, greeting people, is in the Bible. So let's look at a couple of passages. Let's look at in the book of Psalms, first of all. So we're going to look at kind of ushers in the Old Testament, the idea. So Psalm 84. This is almost needed to be an energy day, didn't it? I was thinking about that, and then I didn't. All right, so Psalm 84, verse 1. How amiable are thy tabernacles, O Lord of hosts. My soul longeth, even fainteth for the courts of the Lord. So then it goes down to... Where in the world? The sparrow hath found an house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young, even thine altos, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are they that dwell in thy house. They will be still praising thee. All right, and then we go down to verse 10. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. Oh, here it is. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. Now, the context of that is a little bit different because you are dealing with the Old Testament. So they had doorkeepers. If you remember the psalmist here, and this one isn't necessarily tied to David, but it's during a time, a lot of times when we think of the time of David, we think that there's a temple. There still was not a temple, so they're talking about the tabernacle. The tabernacle may have been more fixed, but it still was the tabernacle. But the doorkeeper was the one, some of his job was the collections. He would receive collections. But in some ways, that was an usher. Then second, we get some of that idea from 2 Kings. 2 Kings 22. In 2 Kings chapter 22, Josiah, this is the reign of Josiah. He was 8 years old when he began to reign. He did that was right in the sight of the Lord, walked in all the ways of David his father. So this would have been that temple, Solomon's temple would have been made here. And then in verse 4 it says, Go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, that he may sum the silver which is brought into the house of the Lord, which the keepers of the door have gathered of the people. So here you see the doorkeepers were collectors of finances, but in some ways, that's why I say it's not specific to ushering, but we see that there were people involved in the Old Testament that weren't just the preachers, weren't just the high priest, they were people assisting. Okay, so that's the idea of ushering. Jeremiah refers to one doorkeeper in Jeremiah 35 as a man of God. And I brought them into the house of the Lord, into the chamber of the sons of Hanan, a man of God, the keeper of the door. So here he refers to a guy that is a keeper of the door as a man of God. Ecclesiastes talks about the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. So that's a couple of references in the Old Testament to the idea of doorkeepers or guys that assisted besides the high priest. There were other folks that assisted and helping out in the smooth running of the operations of the church. And that's kind of what we're talking about in the work of the ushers. So then we go to the New Testament. Okay, in the New Testament, do we see any references to this? Well, in Acts chapter 4, and verse 1, And as they spake unto the people, the priest and the captain of the temple. Look at that. All right, those of you that get into all the, comic guys, This is Captain Temple. Captain Temple. All right. But he was captain of the temple. And so here, this is just a reference. We don't know exactly what the job was, but here there is priest, there's folks that have other responsibilities, more probably the teaching, more the offerings and different things like that, but you have someone that's referenced as the captain of the temple. Okay, then Acts 5. Acts 5. Verse 22, we see, but when the officers came and found them not in the prison, they returned and told, I'm sorry, that is the wrong, that is the morning, but the high priest came. 24, now when the high priest and the captain of the temple and the chief priest heard these things, they doubted of them whereunto this would grow. So verse 24, thank you. And I think it's referenced then in verse 26. So here's that captain. He went with the officers, brought them without violence, for they feared the people, lest they should have been stoned. So there was some authority there with the captain of the temple. The disciples acted as ushers on some occasions in the ministry of Christ. Can we think of some of those? I thought of one quickly. Come on. It was one of those days, wasn't it? Lots of coffee. All right, what? Okay, there. That's one. But then, come on now. Famous. Feeding of the 5,000, because they made them sit, and it was pretty organized. Remember, they made them sit in 50s and all that, and so they had to assign people, because we know that then they had baskets, and they were feeding the people. So somebody organized that, put it together. More than likely, then the disciples were acting kind of as ushers. So we see that there. You can go through and you see that ushering, and we're not saying that all these things then necessarily these guys were all ushers, the captain of the temple, or the guys in the Old Testament, the doorkeepers. But what you're seeing is that there was other peoples involved in the ministry of giving out the Word of God and teaching rather than just a preacher. And that's what we're specifically talking about. Yesterday we talked about the work of the secretary, and that is a very important role. So there are other people that assist in helping things run smoothly. Well, the work of the usher is one of those jobs. And the work of the usher is very important. And some of it goes along with the idea of that secretary. Remember, we were talking about the receptionist. So somebody walks in, and here is, Chief Mom in her house coat, and chewing her gum or chewing her cud. One of the things, and people are like, you know what? I'm not sure about if I like that church. Okay. Well, in the same way, an usher can have that first impression. An usher gives that a first impression. So that's why we're going to talk about that work of the usher. So we see just a few, I think as an introduction, it's a good idea just to go to the Bible and say, all right, so are we just making this up? No, there were other people that assisted in helping things run smoothly in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. Even Christ had people, and some of them were disciples, some may have been others that the disciples grabbed to help out, to help things run smoothly. Well, that's what the work of the usher does for a pastor and a church. So let's look at some of the ideas. So first of all, the person who ushers. The person who ushers. And I have a couple of things there. I just have two ideas with the person who ushers. One, he needs to be a person of prayer. Secondly, I think he should be a person who thinks. And the reason we put a person who prays is because you want someone that is somewhat spiritual. There are some places that they grab someone to be an usher and they've been saved for 7 days. Thou hast been saved for 7 days. 7 days, canst thou usher? And they have no idea. All right? And someone walks in and they smell like a chimney, or they smell like they just got pulled out of a keg. All right? And they're like, hello. All right? And they're like, wow. Hey, you know what? I'm a smoker too. And the chief usher here, Captain Usher, is man. He must be doing something on the down low. Feeling welcome, and then you swap favorite cigarette stories or something like that. Well, that's why I say it's a personal prayer. I'm not saying that there has to be, you go into the Bible and you got to have the same qualifications as a deacon. No, it's not that. But there should be, you want someone that is spiritual. Why? Because as they're coming in, they are, and we're going to talk about this, some of their duties. You're trying to get somebody that spiritually is helping the service. What are they doing? They're trying to be in tune, even with the Holy Spirit. Why? Because sometimes just the Holy Spirit nudging them, they're going to be able to help avoid a problem that could turn into a disaster in the auditorium. Right? That's what the job of the usher is. So that's why I say a person of prayer, first of all. The work begins, and I even talk to our ushers every once in a while. I try to meet with them. I try to do it not at super busy times. So normally it's going to be maybe in December or January, and maybe in a meeting in the summertime, where I just try to touch base with them. I may give them an article every once in a while to read about ushering. Why is it? Because ushering to me is very important. They help my job. In fact, I think it was during the fall campaign, I sent a little blurb to all the ushers after one of the services because I was just really impressed. I thought that something was coming to disaster mode, and an usher came, acted, and did what their job was, and I want them to know that I notice it. I want them to know that. Why? Because if they can stop a problem rather than the pastor from the pulpit saying, hey, dorky, all right there, you just lost some people. All right, and that person, that person, if they can come and just easily get the problem avoided, then they've really helped. And I want the ushers, that's why I say, if they can be praying before, I ask them, hey, could you make sure before you hit the auditorium, pray and ask God to lead and guide you. Pray and ask God to make sure that you're friendly. Because I've been in churches. I would bet that most of you, most college students, they've traveled a little bit. So you've been in, the average college student has probably been in at least 6 different churches. And all of us have been in a church, and ice is warmer. Okay? Ice is much warmer. In fact, dry ice and sticking your tongue on dry ice actually seems more comfortable, all right, than sitting in the, I mean, it's just like, people just, it's almost like you get the creepy sensation that someone's staring at you while you, and then everyone's like, they're just looking, eyeing you. All right, why are they here? Like, I'm sorry, I just wanted to come to church. I guess I'll leave. All right? I mean, there's some place, it's just icy. Well, that's why the job of the usher, if you train your ushers properly, you want it to be friendly. I mean, some people almost act like church has got to be torture. It's got to be, what? Did you smile? Did I see a smirk? No. All right, no, and I've been some. I have actually snuck into a, like Catholic. I think it was in New York City. We slipped in at. There was this massive Catholic church. There is something about Catholic churches. I know it probably cost them $1 billion to make it because they've ripped everybody off, and throughout history they've ripped everybody off and stolen everything. And so they're immensely rich. But there is something neat about walking into those things. I mean, I'm like, wow, is that gold? Like, I'm trying to, I could use that. But we walked into one, and the noon mass was going on. And they had three dudes up there, all right? And I couldn't understand anything. They did it in Latin or whatever. I'm like, who would come to this? They're up there like, yeah, big chicken, I'm like, all right, I have no idea what you just said. And there's a whole group of people just sitting there. And then they kind of sing it. You know, that's why I don't go to Catholic service, but I try to, if I can, you know, slip into a little bit of it. And I'm like, wow, why does anybody go to this? I mean, this is neat. This is exciting. This is I don't know what it is, but it definitely is mystical because it's a mystery. Anything that's going on, and it's not really peaceful or anything like that. And so you go to a service like that, a Catholic service, different things, and it almost is the impression that, oh no, there's a special walk. You don't do eye contact. Everybody's like, you know, looking down. Well, I don't want that at our service. I want it to be pleasant. I want them to understand that we're happy they're here. And an usher helps create that environment. And so the person, as we're talking about the person that you want to usher, one, you want them spiritual. You want them taking a little time to pray about it. You want them coming to the service and expecting, you know what, I want to be used to help somebody either stay. And really, an usher then, if you think about it, an usher then can help in eventually maybe someone accepting Christ. Why? Because maybe their friendliness or just helping them out a little bit puts them at ease in the service. It relaxes them a little bit. They hear the message, and then God is able to get a hold of their heart, and they're able to walk down the aisle. All right, so two things. One, a person of prayer. Secondly, I think it needs to be a person that is thinking or intuitive. All right, intuitive is a bigger word. That's why we use the word thinking, okay? But if they can be intuitive, and what are we meaning by that? They're in tune with what's going on. They cannot come to the service and not have their brain engaged. There's other things that go on, but even like the guy that's in charge of our security, every once in a while he talks to our ushers, and what he wants to give them, and it's not as though an usher is eyeballing, and while he's shaking your hand, he's doing a pat down. Like, all right, oh, he's backing right there. But there is certain things, and that's why I have a guy that researches it and he studies it some as far as security, because in this day and age, we do have Looney Tunes. We got loony people, and they can slide into your service. And who knows? I mean, I've had really for real. I've had ushers that have confiscated guns off of people. All right, knives, different things like that. And so what we try to do is, I want an usher that is thinking. So what is he thinking? He's thinking of the safety of the other members, but he's also thinking engaged in the service even beforehand, greeting people, seating them in certain places. If there's an uneasiness, like for instance, anybody that walks in, Dean Leslie, Jack Brown, anybody that walks in and they're gonna and they come walking in with a backpack, somebody's right with them. Almost always. If we don't know them and they're wearing a backpack, somebody's going to be right next to them. All right, because and I know this about my ushers, especially a few of them. Even if it is something that would blow up, that guy's getting blown up with it. All right, he may not want to, but he's stuck with it. All right, and because he's not gonna ditch it and run. All right, he's not gonna ditch. But we don't really have. We've never really had any issues. But what we're doing is they're always engaged, thinking about it. So security is one. But the other side is if they can be thinking to engage ahead of time. Like, for instance, here somebody comes walking in and they have a 1-year-old. All right, well, we have nurseries. We have nurseries. Some people are just really skittish about nurseries, but what I want them to do is approach them, though, and talk to them about it. Why? Because all of us have been in a service, and I know I am not trying to knock your church if you don't have, if you guys don't have nurseries. It is a thing for me. I always have been in a church, involved in churches that have nurseries. And part of it is that I just twitch. I wouldn't be able to concentrate preaching if all of a sudden there's 5 babies and they're like, ah! I'm like, all right, I'm packing. And in order to stay in the ministry, all right, because shooting someone would I probably could be then, eventually maybe have a group of guys in prison that I could pastor, all right? But in order to stay in the ministry here, it's just that baby, I can't think. It just knocks me off kilter, just the high pitch screaming. So I don't know how anybody else can concentrate. So what I try to get our ushers to do is think. So be here ahead of the service, think about it, so that you then you're helping the service to run smoothly. Okay, so 2 requirements. Those are the 2 main requirements that we're looking for in an usher. What are we looking for? A person who is spiritual, all right, and by that I say they pray, so they're spiritual, but then somebody that's also intuitive. And by that, they can think, they can come engaged in the job that they're going to do. Okay, so that's the 2 things there. Now, what are some duties of the usher? So let's look at a couple of duties of the usher. I think I categorized it into 4 areas. All right, so the first is before the service. Before the service. Okay, the pastor, and there are other folks. All right, if you have Sunday schools going on, let's just say it's Sunday morning. Let's consider Sunday morning, Sunday night. So what do we know? We know that the people that are speaking have spent hours, at least they should, spent hours in preparation for this service. So we don't want to walk in and it not be prepared. Right? We have prepared the message, so let's prepare the meeting place. That's one of the jobs of the usher. So what do we mean by that? Then ushers need to be there ahead of time to make sure that doors are open, that lights are on, that the heat is going, that it's, just a double check of, is it clean looking? All right, is there stuff out? And an usher can do that. And it's not hard. And what are you doing? If that's your job, what you're helping is the pastor. This is what I know. The pastor is thinking about it. He is thinking about it. Why? Because he wants people to come in, and he wants them to. And I'm not saying the whole thing is just to enjoy the service, but part of receiving a message is enjoying it, as in having it a little bit comfortable. I understand that comfort is not everything, but we do live in America. I do not have to sit on the floor. All right? It doesn't have to be 40 degrees. Now, in ours, it's close to that, okay, all the time. But every once in a while, and I understand, but like even last night, the guys that were sitting in the auditorium, what I noticed is, all right, the reason that we err on a little of coldness, because last night, what I noticed in Pastor Armakoff's lesson, it was a little warmer, and all of us know it. I mean, you're teaching on Revelation, all right, because I'm sitting there and I'm enjoying it, and I'm like, all right, because that's kind of what happens sometimes is you get a little too hot. Then all of a sudden, it's just that comfort, especially, and all of you guys know this because I was there too. Sunday morning after the bus route, holy cow, unreal. Sunday morning, I remember I purposely wanted to sit around every bus teen I could because automatically I had to train my head to watch because I knew. I mean, I was up on the bus route. I was doing the songs, doing everything, coming back in, just joking around, and then sit. And all right, and I used to work at Little Sneezers, so I was the closer. So I'd be back in, closing the shop up, back over at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it all just culminated with the heat. Especially, that's why I, as much as possible, don't use the balcony that much. I can remember sitting in that balcony. I don't know. Well, hot air does rise, and in that balcony, it's not just hot air. It's like an eternal flame that just is underneath everything, and the heat is there, and it feels so good. All right. Oh, yes. Amen. Amen. All right. So I understand that as far as the getting things ready. So the usher and the usher and myself, the ushers, we talk about even the temperature a lot. We talk about the temperature. Why? Because of just what we're saying is, yeah, I'm going to err a little bit on being a little cooler. Why? Because what I've learned, if it's a little hotter, everybody's asleep. You might as well just, I can jump around, say whatever, they're not going to be awake. And so we talk about that. So before the service, so the duties of the usher, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get the meeting place to be presentable so when somebody walks in, it doesn't look like, I've been at some churches and, I'm the guest speaker, and they say, oh, yeah, Sunday school's at 9:30. Yeah, you know what, I'll meet you about 9:20. Like, 9:20? Like, yeah. Everybody kind of shows up then. So, at 9:25. Like, I wonder if people show up here. And then they got to run through, turn everything on. Oh, you know what? I'd rather it come in. We're ready for you. We're ready for you. And there are different things. For instance, like in the auditorium, it's all lighted up. We even have, we started this a little while ago. We have soft music that plays. Why? Just because it was just, and especially in there, this huge auditorium, and it's empty and just kind of creepy. All right. So I was like, hey, we'll just have some soft music. If somebody wants to come in and sit, they can just sit there. But then it's not just awkward silence. All right. So that helps out. It's a project that we're working on. I think it's going to take us years, just because it's such a big building. But an idea for those of you that have a smaller building, one other thing that is really helpful for children's ministries, and that's what we're working on someday. But when the children walk through those back doors, I want children's music. All right, and you'd say, why? It's bubbly. I want children's songs playing when they're walking down the hallways. All right, because that adds just that's part of the job of the ushers too. It's creating that. It's not saying that that's going to make them all excited, but walking through the doors, hearing, where in the auditorium it's kind of peaceful, but down here it's songs, and there's tons of them. It's just little songs, this little light of mine, or Jesus loves me, where they walk in and automatically they know it's church, and they know some of the songs. It creates a pleasant spirit. Okay, and that's one of the jobs of the usher. So beforehand, we understand that. All right, then the second thing, the duties of the usher, is readying the sanctuary, or readying the main worship place. So what does that mean? It's checking everything. It's making sure that there's hymn books. It's if you have, for us, especially on Sunday morning, it's making sure we have a stash of Bibles. And so where are those Bibles at? Because if somebody needs a Bible, I know right where they're at. I have ushers that usually they're here about 9:15 on Sunday morning. And what they do, especially for our Sunday school classes, a lot of the Sunday school in the auditorium, they have handouts. Those are all laid out. And then the ushers are laying out guest stuff in the back pew. Why? Because then it's all ready. They have all of the offering plates ready. It's all set, ready to go. That's what an usher does. It shouldn't, as an usher, and this is the beauty of just a layperson. A layperson can be a huge help to a church. How can they be a huge help? Well, the pastor then doesn't have to come in. What can he do? He can be ready and thinking about his sermon rather than, all right, so is the visitor cards ready? Or are all the offering plates ready? Are all the lights on? Is all this on? Now, the pastor is probably, I'm this way. I'm usually down here early, and me and my son, because my youngest son is not on a bus route yet, so we come down and we walk through things. Because I also want him to understand that's what a layperson does. All right, if God wants you to be a pastor someday, then you can do this. But also as a layperson, I want him to understand. As a pastor, what I like is understanding that things are proper and in order. And so some of my job is just teaching my kids different things. Well, that's something he can do. All right, you can be a help. You can be a help to the church by thinking about it and looking at detail and understanding that these things also are behind the scenes things that make it, those also are helping someone hear the gospel. Someone would say, oh, come on. No, an usher is very important. So he's readying the sanctuary. All right, so before the service, he's there ahead of time. He's readying the sanctuary. All right, then the third thing, then he waits pleasantly and he welcomes people. He waits pleasantly and welcomes people. So that means he's in the foyer, or if somebody is, he's always moving. He's always moving. He's in the foyer. Like for us, it'd be in the back foyer. It might be in another church. He's in the back area, and he's looking for guests. And also, he might be talking to visitors. I understand, and not just visitors, to members. But as an usher, remember this, all right, and teach your ushers this. You see a guest, even if you're talking with a church member, excuse yourself and beeline it to that guest. You want the number one job of that usher, one of the number one jobs, I would say there's multiple jobs. It's all of that readying and all of that is important too, but also beelining it to a visitor, shaking their hand, and that's why I try to get our ushers even ahead of time. We have a time where we welcome folks in our morning service, but if they can welcome them ahead of time, that's even better. Like, oh, I can't say hi. We have a time when we do. All right. No, it's okay to be friendly beforehand. Okay, so that usher then is beeline. And also then we have an usher's closet back there, and we keep it loaded with all kinds of other material. In fact, just this fall we made up a new folder that is a little more expensive. So our ushers, I've talked to our ushers about it because they were like, oh, can we give these out? We're going to carry these down during our greeting. I'm like, no, because each of those folders cost at least $2 with everything in it. Okay? So, no. Some teenager that really doesn't care is not going to get this $2 folder that I'm going to find crinkled up and thrown in our locker room, okay? Or thrown out the window at the zoo. I'm not going to, I don't need that. So we have these really nice folders that we've made up, we've spent time on. Well, that's what I've told the ushers. They see a guest and they're like, oh, you know what? You'd like more information? Here's a nice welcome folder. Okay? So we have a lot of things available. Well, that usher then is working on that all coming up to the service. So he's waiting, he's looking, and then, okay, so we have before the service, readying the sanctuary. He's waiting, he's welcoming visitors. Then you have during the service. Then he is active during the service also. He is active during the service. And some of that is Like I have somebody, one or two, that is always out watching because we always seem to have people coming in late. Well, I want them welcomed and then brought in, but they're welcomed outside the auditorium. Like I've talked to our ushers a lot. That's going to be one of my final tips here. I got 15 tips right at the end for ushering. But I have sat in the back, and so I talk to the ushers, and I know that it can't always happen. But what I've instructed our ushers, if all of a sudden somebody comes through and they start talking, as much as possible, step back into the foyer and talk. Because there is nothing more irritating than being in the back, and I'm trying to listen up here, and I hear Mr. Greeter. All right? Like, how's it going? Oh, yeah, is that Applebee's the other day? Like, I'm trying to listen to the song. Oh, yeah, I love burgers. Like, I don't care. All right? So take your mozzarella or cheddar cheese or Monterey Jack and go outside to the foyer. Okay? But, I mean, they're just chit-chat. And I understand that they're trying to be friendly, but that's why I've asked them, I agree we should be friendly, but could you be friendly in the foyer? Okay? Because once we come into the auditorium, if the service is going, we want the service to be the highlight, all right? Not their hospitality about their burgers, okay? So we have before the service, the readying of the sanctuary, waiting and welcoming, then they're active during the service, and then, so we're kind of proceeding, then it's at the end of the service. At the end of the service, when I try, and I've talked to some, it just, guys are busy and sometimes they're not thinking about it, but as much as possible, I try to get a couple of ushers at the end of the service, stay around. If they see guests, you're still welcome. Get them any information, but then just take a couple minutes and tidy things up. Because what does that do? It makes it easier for the next service. Why not do it right then? We just go ahead and tidy things up, just look a little bit is anything just kind of out of sorts? Let's get it back in order. It makes it easier for the next service then. We're already prepping for the next service. Okay, so that is duties of the usher. So then let's give you some final tips. 15. Okay, 15 final tips. So, and I think this is helpful for any of you that are going to be ushers, all these ladies in here, all right? But you can take notes, and as, who is it? Forgot. One of the guests said, take the notes and then tell your husband what to do, okay? So, final tips. So one, always display a warm, sincere smile. And make sure, these are things that then you're reviewing with your ushers. Always display a warm, sincere smile. Number 2, all right, you'll understand this. Don't be a bone crusher. Use a firm but not crushing handshake. Okay? I got one guy, he's not an usher. But you have to be ready when you shake his hand. All right, you got to kind of prep. You got to warm up because when you go for it, there could be pain inflicted. All right, so you're just like, all right, how you doing? All right, you got to have it there, kind of angle it properly so he doesn't just snap your hand in half. Okay, but don't be a bone crusher. Understand that. Okay, so. Number 3, this sounds odd. I call it, don't have piranha breath, okay? Okay? But have some mints, all right? There's nothing worse than somebody's friendly, they're shaking your hand, and then you just fall over, okay? Because you're like, what in the world? What just hit me? All right, there was this cloud, and it wasn't of witnesses. All right. So don't offend people with your piranha breath. have some mints. Make sure, hygiene is important. Then the fourth thing, and there are tools, and I did not put any down, but you can look them up. There are tools. I've even listened to stuff. I listen to stuff all the time or read stuff all the time. So I have actually, in the course of 20-something years, I have looked up and read some things on helping to remember names. All right, as an usher, as much as possible, you greet a visitor, try to later in that service say, hey, so-and-so. There is something about saying somebody's name that just, they're like, whoa, I don't even remember that. All right? So maybe read something or read some articles about remembering somebody's name. It is important. Like, hey, you, nice to see you. All right, all right. So learn the names of the people. Number 5, this is the one that goes back to that foyer idea. Try to refrain from loud talking during the service. That distracts. Number 6, be on time. Always be on time. As an usher, it is so important. So be on time. And being on time as an usher means you're ahead of the service, way ahead. I try to have ushers, at least a couple of them, here about 30 minutes before the service. Now, and I understand, Sunday night and Thursday night are not as vital, but on Sunday morning, it is very, very important having the ushers be there. Then, number seven, listen to the person in charge of the service. So you are ushering, okay? You're active, but also listen, keep an ear tuned to the service going on because that may cue you of a problem. Listen to the service and be engaged, even though, I understand you got to be focused on your job, but also the main idea is helping the service run smoothly. So it could be that the pastor, without saying it, is getting a message across. Hey, maybe, and it's not necessarily coded, but he's saying something that is, oh, you know what? I can take care of that. So listen, that's the idea of being intuitive, thinking. Number 8, seat people in the front of the sanctuary. Leave seats open in the back for latecomers. All right, I try to do that. And in fact, that's one of the jobs that I gave my son because the ushers just can't seem to get it. And so I block off places in the back. Why? Because we have latecomers or we have people that slip out. I'd rather, let's push people down and then the back is open. Okay? So that's your job. Seat people in the front of the sanctuary. Leave seats open in the rear. Number 9, if children are disturbing, try to be a help in either removing them or seating them properly. If you know that a child is a little rambunctious, do not sit them in the second row. That is not the person to walk down and say, I seat everybody in the front of the auditorium. No, not that one. That one needs to be in the back. Okay? So you as an usher can help with that. Oh, I got a great seat. Friendly. Remember, friendly, smiling. In that case, you can grab the kid's hand and have the bone-crushing smash, okay? I have a great seat, all right, for this kid. All right, so that's number 9. Number 10, as much as possible, if you see somebody that is sick, remove them quick and quietly. It will not always happen that way. All right, I've had people faint in our churches. I've had seizures in our services. It doesn't always happen that it's going to be real smooth, but as much as possible. That's what I love about our ushers. Our ushers are pretty efficient, and it's also like there are people that are in our auditorium when we talk about that. So I have nurses, I have EMTs, and they all know to move if they see something. Okay? So it's just getting that a little bit organized, because then it all just kind of flows. And yeah, it's a little hiccup, but then you can sing a song, all right? You can have an extra verse of something, but then things get back running smoothly. All right? People understand if there's a little problem, if somebody gets sick, but as much as possible, you're trying to remove that sick person quietly. Okay? Number 11, catch visitors and have them fill out cards. And and that means if it's like on Sunday nights, now this coming Sunday night, we'll have a little visitor time because we're pushing for that. But we don't always on Sunday night or Thursday night have a visitor time. But my ushers know if they see a visitor, they're getting them information. That's the job of the usher. Get them information. Okay? Number 12, be well groomed. Be well groomed. All right, it's just important. And so that's why, and there are different ways to do it. For instance, on Sunday mornings, and I don't know if some of my ushers probably forget, I don't require it necessarily on Sunday night and on Thursday, but on Sunday mornings, as much as possible, we have usher pens. And on Sunday morning, as much as possible, I want them wearing them. Why is that? Because on Sunday morning is when I have the majority of guests, and I have some people that just come Sunday morning. All right, every church has that, and I have some people that they don't just come it's not just Sunday morning, they may come every other Sunday morning. They consider us their church, but they come once a month. Okay? But so they don't necessarily know a lot of people, but that usher pen says when they come up and they're getting a little rambunctious and they say, hey, you know what, maybe we should move over here. Who are you? Usher. Captain Usher, in fact. All right, I am the chief usher. Okay? But having that usher pen helps out because then they're not thinking, who is this? Well, it's the usher. And the usher, in most places, an usher, you go to a concert, an usher is there, and what are they doing? They're helping control situations. They're helping move people around. So even having a little pen sometimes can help. Okay? Then 13, we got 3 more. All right, so always be well groomed. 13, the usher should set an example of 2 big words, decorum and dignity. All right, so teaching your ushers a little bit. It's standing properly with posture. It's welcoming people. It's the idea of being well groomed. They understand, this place that it has a little dignity. They help establish that in this place of worship, there's a little dignity to it. And that's why the idea of being well groomed. That helps people when they see that ushers are in shirt and tie and in suits. It helps things. If the usher was in shorts, yeah, it would change the mentality. It really would. So when you don't, they can help establish a couple of those things right away for you. Number 14, be prepared to act quickly and with difficult situations. And the last one is, as much as possible as an usher, maintain a spirit of worship. Even as an usher, maintain that spirit of worship, because understand that you are helping the service be a spiritual service. So keep that yourself. That'll help you.